Hello and welcome to the same wavelength podcast, YouTube video, whatever. I have one of my favorite people here to discuss the wonders of paint and color and art and science. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, now would be the time.
All right. Hi, I'm Marina. I'm like the sole one person behind Studio Marina. So I'm both on Instagram and YouTube. So what I do, I am a ceramicist, but also a paint maker, and I also review and like look at like different fountain pens because that's been my hobby for a very long time. So inks and stuff like that.
You are a jack of all trades. You have
Yeah.
been nothing but phenomenal and an inspiration to me, seeing you actually make everything by hand and talking about the pigments and everything behind the process of both ceramics and paint making is just mind-blowing to me. One of the reasons I wanted to invite you is that even though you are not a scientist, I don't think you'd claim that you're a scientist, especially being married to a scientist. But you do so much of the chemistry and the behind the scenes technical work behind such a staple of art supplies that I thought you would be a wonderful person to interview for a project like mine, which is about science and art.
I'm honored to be here. So,
Thank you. I was really wondering if you could sort of maybe talk a little bit about, I really kind of want to focus on pigments and sort of your relationship with making paint and ceramics and sort of maybe how you feel about those really like technical, getting your hands dirty parts of art that used to be like what it was to be an artist, and now most people don't do what you do.
right. So, let's start with like the obvious. Something, an object you like everyone definitely has at home, right? So, yeah, there you go. There's yours. This is mine. Yours is probably commercially made. Mine,
100%.
yeah, mine has been made by my two hands. I'm struggling, and you can see like this is not even.
It was beautiful.
But thank you. But this is the difference, right? So we came where we as humans went from. Well, like we came from this, digging up all of this from the ground, making to your cup. And it's the progress. And it's like it's not bad.
No.
It's great that we all can have whatever mugs we want to have. But I think in just the recent years, and I've seen this, I guess, most famously, and a lot of people might relate to it during pandemic, where people like my pottery, the one that I'm a part of, has been around for a very long time. It's been
Yeah.
around in Berkeley. I'm in Berkeley, and it's been around for like 50 plus years. I don't think they've seen a boom of an interest in pottery the way they've seen during pandemic,
Yeah.
and like people suddenly taking hand building classes on Zoom, and just like being like, oh my god, I can make
Yeah.
and this is kind of like, I also feel this is kind of where we came back as people like heavily, like everyone uses a phone, everyone does everything, AI is being pushed on us right now, right? It is what it is.
Yeah.
But I think like some embrace it, and some are just like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this the way it used to be done.
Yeah.
So there is some sort of like, I tie it to kind of like satisfaction, mental health.
Yes.
For a lot of people it is. And like during pandemic, like people are like, oh my god, I don't have a hobby. And through, I don't know, simple thing like that you had some time to do something, like people are like, oh my god, I'm coming back to like, this is how it used to be made, right? And so I kind of, in art school, when I was in art school like 20 years ago, which was forever ago, but I remember just like we learned little things here and there and whatever. And a lot of kids like went on for like graphic design after and stuff like that. Um, I didn't go to like continue art education, but it kind of stuck with me, like the old ways of making things. And then when I picked up ceramics again, and watercolors, coincidentally, right? That's how we met with
Yeah.
you. through watercolors. And so I picked up stuff, and I'm like, at that point I was like already 20 years after my school experience. I was like, something's like really odd because the watercolors don't seem to be the same quality.
Nope.
They've gotten more expensive, but like like I remember using like yellow ochre and like smelling bits of like honey in it.
Yeah.
So it was a thing. And I was like looking into it. I think I stumbled upon the Jackson's Art had in the UK had a very good article, like breaking down. Obviously, they're also selling their own product, but they're breaking down like chemically what's in modern watercolors. And there's not a lot of pigment in a lot of
Yeah.
cases. And some studies that I've seen around cited, I think up until like even like half or 40%, let's say 40 to 50% of professional
Yeah.
watercolors don't quite have, you know,
So
like
crazy.
it's odd, but like 40 to 50% of your watercolor pan, let me show you just to compare. So this is a tiny pan of my handmade watercolor. So imagine that half of this, or nearly half of this, does not have this yellow pigment.
Yeah.
It has fillers, and fillers can be anything. I've seen marble dust, I've seen mixed in there, I've seen most famously, I would say, like particles of glass,
Oh
like
my
really,
God.
really fine glass particles, kind of like mixed in with the pigment, and it kind of dilutes the pigment too. It
Yeah.
does not make it less light fast, from what I understand.
Mm.
So you still get, your, let's say, ultramarine blue, right?
Yeah.
Synthetic ultramarine blue, and you still can use it, and it's just still not the same intensity that if you make it by hand. And that's how I started making my stuff.
Got it. So is out of a personal need to have more high quality watercolors that you like
Right.
had control over what went into them.
Right.
Yeah,
Control, nostalgia, let's be honest. I
sure.
feel like if I was doing my art school now, like I wouldn't care.
I feel that.
But
Someone who
yeah,
just got out of
you
art
know,
school. Oh,
it is what it is. And then it just turned out that I'm not the only one. It turned out like there's like a whole community of people who are making colors and selling them, because believe me, it's very expensive to make colors.
yeah.
Like buying pigments is expensive. If you buy like a bunch of pigments, high-end pigments, and make it for yourself, you got to
Yeah.
share with someone. So this is how I started
Mhm.
selling as well.
Yeah, it's everything you're talking about I've been through personally, like not as a watercolor maker because I don't do that, but I learned how to knit when I was a kid. I came back to knitting during the pandemic and, being able to do something with my hands and feel connected to the things that I'm wearing and that I'm interacting with feels really good because you also just feel a deeper connection to anything that you've personally been a part of. And it's also a way to reconnect, like every system that we're a part of is meant to be industrialize and disconnect the person from like where's your food grown, where is your clothing made, don't think too hard about it. But when you start making things, and it could cost me $300 to get the yarn to make a sweater and 1,000 hours, but it's something I made with my hands and it's going to last me my whole life, and I know it's going to be high quality, or as high quality as it could be given that I'm making it and I make mistakes. But that's how I feel about your paints. It's like, yes, they're slightly more expensive. Like you do not charge as much as you should be charging, given how much.
Yeah, I've been told.
Yep. Like even then, like I mean, like I couldn't sell a sweater for $1,000. No one would buy it. I didn't make this. But like I feel real connection when I work with the colors that you've made, and then I also think really deeply about what goes into them and what each color means and what each blend means and how much work you put into them. And I think it's a really important movement. That everyone who's in this, I guess, watercolor community, paint community,
Stationary.
yeah,
Stationary community. I think
stationary
it's like,
community,
yeah, broader thing at
yeah.
this point.
Um, I mean, do people make their own inks for pens, or is that more
I
finicky?
I know some makers who do, and that's like a whole different world. Like I don't make their people make their own pens.
Oh
Like it's
my
mind blowing to me. I'll show you at some point,
God.
but just like, when you make these like connections and you just like, this is awesome. Like if you think about it, none of this is a necessity. Like you
Yeah.
don't need to make paint. You don't need
No,
to make your own, pens. You don't need to make your own mugs. Um, yeah, but as you said, there is something about that connection, right? That you have with that. But also I think like going back to the quality, like if you think about it, I don't know about like your grandparents, but I bet they had less items, but they were more quality
absolutely. Yeah.
than we do
Better.
now.
Yeah.
So that has changed a lot too. Just the scale has changed and our kind of hoarding in the way of things, right?
I mean, that's 100% true with fashion. And I did a lot of research on that for my MFA thesis project. And just like people used to have very few sets of clothing and they were all handmade for them. They were all hand tailored to their own body. And now with fast fashion, like, no, I don't have a single object or piece of clothing that was made to my body unless I made it myself or like I went out and specifically had it made for me. And that's like a complete 180 within the last, what, 300 years. So
Mhm.
crazy to think about. And I mean, the time scale you're talking about with paint quality dropping is probably like 20 or 30 years. So um, I agree that it's good to have things accessible, but you want the things to be accessible and cheap. And if they are worse quality, you want that price to reflect that, which is why there's
Mhm.
artist quality watercolors that aren't professional grade.
And I think this is where we kind of, the difference is that when you see these very cheaply made dye-based items, that are presented to you as a watercolor, which is fine, like you don't need to buy $200 set for your 6 year old. Yeah, it's not,
Don't
it's
do
not that type of,
that.
but I feel like that's not kind of like, and it's the same with like this items of clothing and stuff like that are finally made. Like there is not quite an understanding why the value is there
Right. Yeah.
and what is the difference, because there is a humongous difference between this sweet little kid set for like $5 and like $150 set.
Yeah. And I think the main issue is that because we live in this consumerist culture, especially where like nothing is made here anymore, and that's obviously a huge contentious thing, but like people are really disconnected. People they don't know the difference chemically or process-wise between your paints and the paints you buy in the store. And it's really sad. I was just talking to a friend about this earlier today that like artists used to be really involved in the making of their pigment, not their pigments, but like their paints. And, even if they weren't mining their own pigments, they still had to know more about them to know how they worked. And even if they had an assistant grinding them, like they too used to be an assistant. And now you go to Michael's and you buy a tube of acrylic paint and you have no idea what any of the pigments are. And you're just like, oh, that's a weird name. What's a phthalo? What's that made of? And then you don't even research it. So,
And then you
um,
sell your painting and then it kind of
yeah,
doesn't work, because it's gonna be bleached out by the sunlight because you don't know about
it's crazy.
light
Like,
fastness. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, when I bought my first set of watercolors, like ever, which was from Case for Making, years ago, I bought Carmine, did not know what it was made of, and I'm vegan, and then I was like, oh, I don't want to use this because it's like made from dead bugs, and then it's also not even light fast, and so I was like, I don't feel comfortable using this unless it's in a sketchbook that's closed or it's gonna stay in a drawer somewhere. But I wished, and I probably would have bought it, maybe not the animal part, but like I buy light, not light fast pigments all the time. I love fluorescent colors and I still use them for fun and for practice and whatever. But like, I wish someone had taught me beforehand, and there's just no disclaimers.
And I will find something that I neglected to find it before we started, but that's kind of like my stash of like books
Yeah.
on different subjects on that. Some are ceramics and some are, like watercolors. And so I have this one book, if I will. Oh my God, I have so many things. If I find it, Yeah, so I have a lot of like 150-year-old books on like pigments and things like that and how they came about. Oh, let's see. This is one of them. Winsor and Newton, um,
Oh my God, it's
the
so
big
pretty.
companies. Oh. And then like there's so many at the time. Like Winsor and Newton, I think is like the most kind of
Famous.
known.
Yeah.
Yeah, who started kind of being interested in that and being like, huh, we've heard like we're making these paints and we've heard from artists that the painting they're selling are not really withstanding, in the
Yeah.
client's home. And like we're talking end of like 19th century.
Right.
So this is book. Um, it's probably not that old. This is a reprint. But Winsor and Newton had these kind of started like researching. This is
Cool.
not like edition, but it's pretty old stuff. And like they had like
Oh wow.
styles, like you could like look in like your like what you like, like how things are like
Wow. Oh,
done, like all the colors. But they also had like a whole research about because what effectively it was, their product was affected by what might or not, might not be true. Like people are stopping to buy their stuff, and they're just like not sure anymore if they should, buy matter, like stuff like that. The matter lakes and all of the lakes basically they're
totally.
ended up not being life fast.
Yeah.
But they were like a big part of specifically flower painters, like the ones who were like, yeah,
Right.
like if you like those little sweet,
Botanical paintings.
anything like that, which was a big thing end of the 19th century. This is what you would use. Like I have whole palettes from that time where it's like it's all madder lakes.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And people wouldn't know better. And it's, I mean, like now if you're an artist and you're not paying attention, I feel able to judge you because you have the internet. Back then, the color science wasn't even there yet. And there's some tension now, right? Because like companies don't have it in their best interest to release information on how accurately light fast their pigments are because they want to sell them to you and they want to,
I
say,
do.
oh, it's light fast, like it's fine. And I know Golden does actually really rigorous testing of their pigments, but I don't know that there's like a ton of companies out there that just do like pure
Very few.
tests. Yeah.
I know of a few. I don't, it's not a commercial, but there is like about one handmade brand that does that.
Yeah. And there's like one woman, like I found her blog a while ago, and she literally tested every watercolor she had, like really rigorously, and just blogged about it for free.
Mm-hmm.
She took all this time and effort to be like, hey, this is a warning to other artists. If you use this brand in this pigment, this
Yeah.
is what's going to happen. And I was like, thank you. I was like, we need more people like that.
There's a scientist who does that out of London,
Yeah.
University of London, I think. She is incredible. She was the one that discovered that yeah. Have you heard that what is it, Daniel Smith? They're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah.
cancel
Oh,
me now.
yeah, I totally saw
But
that.
Daniel Smith is not very truthful about
Right.
the most expensive line
Yeah.
of like gemstone colors.
Right. And they
Yeah.
like some of them weren't accurate as to like what gemstone was or like what pigment was like actually used and like that's
Mhm.
I don't want to get sued, but you can learn about that
Yeah,
all
me
the time.
neither. But
Yeah.
it's a controversy. But at the end of the day, there is not like let's be honest, it's up to each and every maker, each and every company. There is no specific unified standard
Right.
everyone abides by. We kind of sort of believe that they will.
Yeah. And like, the science is out on all of that and it's kind of like foodstuffs. It's like, you hope that a company is going to abide by the standards that are set by each individual country, but like what happens if the FDA doesn't exist? Like there's I guess what we're sort of boiling this down to is like because there's a profit incentive to make cheaper quality materials for more money, basically it's driven people like you to get back to their roots to say, well, I'm not going to have any controversy with the paints I make because as long as I know where the pigments are from and I trust my pigment supplier, which also you never know, you could be scammed. But as much as you can control what you're making, it makes for a better user experience for yourself and for the people that you're selling to. And you are so amazing. Being friends with you is so amazing because I really feel connected to this old way of making art, which is that you have a paint supplier, you have someone you trust, you have an apothecary, you have a community that you're a part of, and it makes making the art a more universal human experience. And that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's true. And this community that you've, sort of introduced me to, and you'll introduce me more to the pen community, is so radically important to the act of art making, such that I'm not just like in my little studio, like on my iPad, like not connected to the world. Like I really feel um, in tune with this long history of pigment um, grinding and all of the other elements of it.
Yeah, no, it's I guess it's also like my part of it is I also have trust in like that my suppliers like you have to research them. You have to understand that sometimes even they might be fooled by
Yeah.
someone. Like these things do happen, especially with my favorite pigment and a lot of people's favorite pigments, which are, let me show you. Oh my God. Okay, so
Oh,
that's malachite.
I love it.
That's malachite, and that's lapis, one of the purest
Yeah.
lapis forms I
Um,
have. This is like as close as it gets to Fra Angelico,
yeah.
but this is not a Fra Angelico yet. So there is like the most expensive one that we as humans are like we're obsessed with.
Yeah.
That is so expensive. Not even I have it. So
Is that one from Afghanistan or Chile or
so the ones I have, this is like one of the very trustworthy people that I buy from. There's this restorer out of Greece
cool? Love
that,
that.
yeah, who like makes his own stuff. So like this is who I try to find and buy from. And some of my sources you cannot buy from unless you have an art history degree.
Yeah. It's the same with like gem making. Like there's some
Yeah.
gemstones where you need a degree to be able to go there and like know what you're looking at. And it's so important to like maintain those lines of communication and trust and like know what you're actually working with because none of us have
Mhm.
microscopes to be like, oh, this is
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah. This
Oh,
is
it's
like a
beautiful.
lower grade, but it's like it's very cool. It's
Yeah.
one of like I made this like forever ago. So this has been like my sample for like my own kind of
Yeah.
lapis-ish. It's like low grade, but it's like it's makes me happy. It's one of the first ones I made like years ago.
Yeah.
So it's still there and it's like still like something that I'm like in awe of because that was so precious to us as humans. Like we are obsessed with blue. Like it is just so many good things. Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
So many things, so many precious things to us. And I feel like that's, just having that is amazing. But also, yeah, knowing where it comes from, especially I feel like I don't know, like synthetic stuff is another conversation because like there is natural pigments and then there is synthetic stuff and sometimes you're just like this is better than natural but but then
But I mean, but what's better, right? Like it's
but
like
then it's like not great for if someone makes it for you it's not great for their health, like the cadmiums are so beautiful, but so not great. And then like the famous manganese blue, like
uh,
one of the reasons why we stopped its production. It's fine for me to make my paint out of it, but when it used to be produced in the factories in Germany, it was extremely toxic to
yeah.
people who were in there.
Yeah.
So
Uh, and that's all of art history is filled with stories like that, like lead white and
oh yeah.
emerald greens that, killed people. And again, that sort of makes me really interested in this history, this like project of mine, which is like I really want people who are just lay people and everyone else to have conversations about science and art because it's important to know about these things. And like I'm not like a hippie who's like, oh, don't eat the chemicals. I'm like, no, like you should know what you're interacting with and like,
Mhm.
you know, you should know what dyes are used in your clothing and you should have this deeper connection with um not everyone needs to be a chemist, but you could know a little bit more about the things you're interacting with, just like I think people should learn more about the trees in their backyards. And, I guess I'm interested in reconnecting people with things that they would have known about in the past that we no longer seem to care about, but are still really important.
Yeah. No, but it's also like a good point that like the reason why we have all of these historic, things with lead in it. It's also like people not realizing, 19th centuries and before that, like how much lead they had around them, like their
Yeah,
pipes were lined with lead, stuff like that. It's like their wallpaper
right.
was
And
toxic to them. Like
yeah,
we don't have that,
right.
especially
And
to that degree anymore, but we still have something around us. Like,
yeah,
and it's just like, your life expectancy has grown. Like there are visual signs that we're doing better as humans. But, at the same time, I think it's extremely important to know what is around you. And that's why we are where we are,
yeah,
because, there's starting being like regulations and understandings and like, hey, maybe we shouldn't use lead on the teacup that we, which was
yeah.
still a thing in production until like 1940s, I think,
Oh my God, that's
in
so
some
crazy.
places. Yeah. So like,
And
yeah.
you also had you had lead paint in houses and you had lead in gasoline and there's like actual studies that were done that were like children's IQs increased whatever 10 points or
Mm,
something after this was banned and it's important to have this record of there's a reason we put things in things and there's a reason we take things out of things and
yeah.
that knowledge is really important. So maybe that's a bit too far off from art supplies, but it's all connected. They think Napoleon died because of the green in his wallpaper and because of the humidity and fungus. I actually wanted to ask you about malachite. So malachite is light fast, but it's like damaged by humidity.
Um, no, I think it reacts. I
Ah,
think the whole thing is it just reacts with things over time. So here you go. This is mine. This has not really
so
been
pretty.
used, but even you can see like in the middle, it's like
Mhm.
developing this different pattern.
Yeah,
So this is completely normal for malachite. And this is a very pure malachite.
right.
But like when someone will start using it and they're gonna be using their paintbrush, you will see this turn like yellowy.
Yeah,
Just how it is with it. I also this is why I use like very specific gum arabic
right.
that is as clear and as not yellow
As
as
possible.
possible.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's good to know too, because it's like as long as you know sort of it's like being a good cook. It's like oh, well, these flavors don't work well together. And it's up to you to say, I'm gonna add this, cooking the basil is bad, but like leaving it on fresh is good. Okay, well, I need to know that. I need to know how to make the sauce properly. I need to know if I'm gonna use malachite to not use it with these other colors. And when
Mm.
I was learning about oil painting, my professor said the same thing. She was like, you really need to know if you're using two paints that are going to have a really bad reaction because it might be, and it's less so now, but in the old times before people knew, like you could be painting, white paint on top of something and overnight it could turn black because it had a reaction and then your whole painting is gone. So, I guess that's a diatribe, but it's good to know these things. Maybe we only have like 10 minutes left, so I'm wondering if you want to sort of direct the conversation. If you, after making your personal ceramics and paints for several years, have maybe advice or like a philosophical thing you'd like to discuss about what you've learned and what you'd like more people to know about, other than you make cool stuff and visit your Etsy. Um,
When I reopen it soon, yeah.
yeah,
I think what I've learned, and I have, is and you yourself, we both have an enormous amount of paint.
yes.
So my advice is not having that much, but buying quality, and having like 5, 6 big pallets, good
Yeah.
pallets. Um, and just understanding that this little thing, and let me show you the other one. Um, these little things are gonna last you for extreme amount of time. Like they will.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of watercolor, right? Um, like obviously we have tube watercolors, but these ones you take with you, you paint plein air, you just like take whatever you go with you. And like if you have 5, 6, I would say palettes, I have them seasonal. Like I have 2 palettes that I take with me, and I sort of build them as in like seasonally, like the green leaves, like whatever, stuff outside. I like urban sketching.
Hmm.
So like whatever, I think is there for me, I'll put it in. I do not do a lot of shimmery paints.
Yeah.
I do not, because I also use very fine paint brushes, and
Right.
a lot of times they're damaged by shimmer. But I'm open to it. I do have like one very nice fine gold
Mm,
um paint that I take with me because there are accents, around us,
really.
like especially if I travel to Rome. There's so much gold
Yeah.
on their, buildings and stuff like that. So that's kind of essential for me to have something like that. So you would like have your regular, colors that you can mix. But I like my convenience colors as well put in there, so something like that. If you can just like do your research, there's so much information available as far as, like painting advices. I'm sure I'm going to do some on my channel too. That, and then also like if you have trust issues like we have, just find small makers and buy from them, research them, understand where they come from, if they're aligned with like your personal values, and buy from them.
Just buy from you.
Um,
That's my advice. Get one really good friend who's good at what they do and knows what they know. Yeah, that's so interesting about even having your palette sort of like in tune with the world around you. The seasonal thing is super interesting, and I guess I've never thought about doing that, mostly because I'm all neon all the time. Um, but that's, like when I do my nails, like I do neons in summer, and I feel like the earthy greens and the grays of winter. And I guess, I don't know, being more present in the world is such an element of art making. Although I do feel like collecting paint is its own hobby and vice. And
and you're free to do so.
I feel like a lot of people in the community that it really scratches an itch. Like, cause I really like when I look at my paints of yours, like I do feel bad using them when I use them for the first time because they are like gemstones to me. And
Oh.
there's another kind of beauty of a used palette that has been loved and cherished and,
Right.
created art.
Done you very quickly before, just as an example. So this is a
Oh,
summer-ish thing.
so nice.
So this was something I called La Dolce Vita,
Yeah.
inspired by, Italy and like the cinema of like 60s. And then this side by side is the one of my last ones that I made. This is a Venice inspired. So this for me
Beautiful.
is fall and winter in Italy.
Yes, totally,
So
totally.
this is side by side. This is, you can totally make do with this like
Yeah.
on a trip. So this is kind of what I mean by it. So you
Yeah.
don't have to have a lot of it, but like if you buy like something you really like from people like you really like what they make, you can like mix and match. Just don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good message. Because there is a lot of fear of ruining things, and I think it's really important to just say, no, experiment, use the paints, life is short. Um, and yeah, so we only have a couple minutes. Is there an ending note that you have? A word of wisdom?
Just take care of your mental health. If watercolors is your thing, if it's not, it's fine. You can still doodle. Like you don't have to find and buy like expensive stuff straight away. Just doodle, swatch, like the act of swatching any color, any ink, anything. That's gonna like show you if you wanna, continue on this path or no. But I think like we're all in it for the mental health, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah. Nothing in the universe makes me as happy as colors, especially yours. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being my another victim of mime on this channel. And I'm excited to swap over and get interviewed by you in like 2 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Of course.